I'm going to be talking today about how we transitioned our company from ELK, stands for Elastic, Logstash, and Kibana, for those who don't know, to Sumo Logic. This happened about over a year ago, I think now. Haven't looked back, thank God. So, a bit about me. I've started and grew some pretty exciting teams over the past few years. About 10 years now, I've been doing some form of DevSecOps, and a number of companies you might have recognized. A lot of it has been driven from writing infrastructure as code from the beginning of my career. I started by working at a few web hosting companies. And in fact started one of my own web hosting companies a while back in London, got bought by Rackspace. It's pretty exciting. That really kind of helped form my knowledge around DevOps, and then it became a thing a few years ago. And so now I lead the SRE team at Moovweb here. Also, just a side note, I've been an avid Sumo user since 2014, so this is not my first time at the rodeo. Yeah, it really a really great company that I've had a great opportunity to work with. So, what I'm going to be talking about today, I'll give you kind of an understanding of what Moovweb is and what we do, and I'll let you know about kind of like day one on my job, as a couple of my colleagues can attest to. What did I have to do? I had to, move off of ELK, try to figure out how to get it under control and move off if necessary. Going to go over some key metrics that we look at, in terms of like performance, security, time to resolution, things of that nature. Go over some other benefits, some tangible benefits that some of our team members feel day to day, and then I'll go over a few of demo slides or demo dashboards that we use at Moovweb day to day. So first I'm going to go over a bit about what is Moovweb, like what do we do? Moovweb is an enterprise PaaS. For those who don't know, it's a platform as a service, right? What it does is it allows companies that have existing desktop websites, and they want to create a sub-second React website. And it helps them to migrate that without having to do an entire revamp that takes months or even years to do. Give you a great anecdotal example, right? 1-800-Flowers is one of our biggest customers and one of our biggest partners, really. And we were able to migrate their existing mobile application over to a React application using our XDN, our Experience Delivery Network, in record time, in just, I think, 2 months. Really fast. And for those of you who work in enterprise and that sometimes these things take a lot of time, that's pretty fast. How do we do this? Well, we leverage existing CDNs. We have a partnership with Fastly now that we're working on, and we help to deliver this stuff using edge-side logic. Doing things like cookie manipulation and edge dictionaries to help you do A/B testing and multivariate testing and things like that. Really important for marketing teams. But it also allows you to utilize existing platforms. So, enterprise e-tailers, retailers. We also have a lot of banking customers. Anybody who works in these fields knows that these things are really ingrained in the engineering teams, so it's hard to change them. Well, we allow you to do that without having to change them. So really exciting stuff, and just recently we started working on an open source PWA architecture, so it allows you to build PWA websites. One really great example I'd go back to is 1-800-Flowers. They are the kind of cornerstone of the Google I/O. If anybody watched that, it allows you to load the PWA in under a second. Take your phone out, try it, even on this crappy Wi-Fi. Guarantee it will work. so that's really what we do. We help you deliver these applications. Well, we actually also power 1/3 of the e-tailer or the online shopping experience for Americans. If you know, 1 out of 3 of you have probably touched one of these websites in the past month on your mobile phone. So yeah, definitely really exciting. One on here, Vistaprint, is actually the fastest online website in America right now on the mobile device, according to Internet Retailer. So we know what we're talking about when it comes to performance and speed and reliability. Well, unfortunately, ELK wasn't that. It wasn't reliable, it wasn't performant, it wasn't cost effective. So what did management tell me? Management told me, we've got to reduce that cost. We've got to figure out how to, you know, reduce not only the actual cost, but the qualitative cost. So like, you know, why are all these engineers working to keep it online? I had to figure that out. And that's exactly what management meant when they gave me the ticket that says reduce cost, right? They said, why is it complex? Why is it always down? Why is it always costing us time to, you know, keep engineers on this log management system? Why is it not managing itself? So I did a bit of research. I looked at, you know, what was going on when I first got there. This was back in, I think, September or so of last year. And, you know, I found a few disturbing things. First off, you know, why are we sending 700 gigs a day of production logs to our stack? And moreover, why are we only able to retain 10 days of those logs? For those of you who are on an SRE or a DevOps team and you've had to go through security compliance, like PCI for instance, you know that you have to retain logs for a certain number of days. 10 days ain't it, okay? So we were only able to retain these logs for 10 days, not really a good idea. Kibana was not getting a lot of use. Andrew, raise your hand. Yeah, Andrew was the one user of Kibana day in and day out. And I have to say that it was actually really important for us to use Kibana because we had a lot of questions that we had no answers to. I'll get into that in a bit. So I talked about reliability of ELK as well, and because of the size, the sheer size of our cluster, it took about 1 to 2 people to keep it online. About 40% of their time, day in, day out, was spent keeping the cluster online, managing the issues, talking to AWS support to get, you know, the cluster rebooted or re-provisioned. It was a nightmare. And not only that, our SRE team didn't have the limited work, it didn't have any knowledge really of Elasticsearch internals. Sure, they knew how to use Kibana, right? Sure, they knew how to perhaps ship the logs to Elasticsearch via Logstash, but they didn't know how to upgrade the cluster. It was kind of a black box. So we essentially just stayed on Elasticsearch 1.5, and as you know, it's up to like 5 or 6 now. It was really bad, and that's bad for security as well. So we also had production outages a lot, and those outages required, because of the limited working knowledge, the intervention of AWS. Side note, our Elasticsearch cluster was actually hosted on AWS Elasticsearch managed service. That managed service actually also came with managed costs. So had to get some people on to help out with that. And so how much was this costing us? Anyone want to wager a bet? No? Okay. Well, it was actually costing us $144,000 a year to ship 500 gigs a day that no one looked at. That was down all the time. All right, not good. So, what did this start? What did this look like? And if you don't get the reference, it's Will Smith from Men in Black. So we had a very complex, and this is more of a generalized a diagram of what the architecture looks like. Essentially, we had app servers, and what CLVC in our terms means Nginx and Varnish on the same server, because those things need to be together in order to get that data back and forth very fast because it's a caching layer. So app servers, CLVC servers went into things called Spew. Well, what does Spew do? Well, Spew was the thing that actually took the logs and did that initial filtering with Logstash, okay? Then it shipped it off, then it put it onto RabbitMQ, which was the first tier of queuing. So if the queue server was down, then Spew held onto it for a certain number of, certain amount of time. Then it shipped it off to the queue server. Well, the queue server had a RabbitMQ on it as well. And this actually was in a different region. So not only did we have the server cost, we had the intra-region costs with AWS, right? Then we had to ship it to LogParse to do additional filtering for some bizarre reason. And then we finally shipped it off to Elasticsearch. So on top of the $144,000 we were spending at AWS, we were also spending close to $35,000 or $36,000 a year on these servers just to do filtering and queuing, okay, of 500 gigs a day. All right, so everybody following me? Cool. So what happened? Well, we didn't actually need any of this. If any of you are already Sumo customers, you'll know that there's something called Cloud Syslog, all right? This is all we do today to ship our logs to Sumo Logic. And it took literally a day to set up. So now all we have to do is have our syslog on all of our instances, and then we have to just send using a certain message format in our syslog and over to Sumo Logic over TLS. So it's all encrypted in transit and encrypted at rest on Sumo. Cool. So what does Sumo Logic offer to my team that others can't? Well, Sumo's got a very easy and to pick up and use query language. So if you've ever used SQL, you'll kind of understand exactly what this means, right? You've got a source on the left, and you've got a parser and a filter, and then you're done. And you can easily see that this pulls up, and Andrew can attest to. He looks at this query all the time. This is actually a JavaScript backtrace from one of our mobile applications. So I can go through and find errors very fast and let our customers know, and they can fix them and get everything out the door. But not only that, engineers can find answers to their questions. So not necessarily even ones that we knew that we had to ask, but they were curious about. They could just log into Sumo and type out a query using that simple query language, because I told someone that they couldn't find it by 6 o'clock. And then I lost a bet. But no, it's really helpful also for code reviews. So you can take a query and you can put the link into it into a GitHub without having to worry about, oh, is this thing on the VPN? Oh crap, I can't link to it. I can't let people know. No, you can use the content sharing on Sumo Logic as well, and you can just put that into GitHub and say that it's world accessible, right? And also it allows you to squash bugs. Our people who are not really on the SRE team are also logging into Sumo Logic and able to pick it up and go because of the really great documentation that they've got. Yeah. So what did the impact on my team look like? Well, we had a really great turnaround, I think. For major issues, we went from an average of 80 minutes to 15 minutes. And that means, we were able to get to a resolution, meaning, we were able to close out a status page, right? If we had a major incident. In 15 minutes, I mean, we might not have solved the problem. We might have had to follow up or, tell customers we'll get back to them but we were able to solve a problem that we were not able to do in Kibana within even an hour. Same for minor issues. Oh, AWS is having a glitch or something, but I'm able to figure that out in 5 minutes. And what about security issues? I'm super excited about the Cloud CM, by the way. I just looked at that. Really awesome. And that might even be able to reduce our time to respond to security incidents from the 30 minutes it is today. By the way, it was 2 hours before, down to even 15, 20 minutes. It's really great stuff. What about other benefits? One thing that I spent way more time than I should have had to on like my first or second month at Moovweb, was I had to actually take the logs, the raw logs, from Kibana somehow, take them, a couple of gigs of data, compile it, and then find a way to ship that to our customers. But with Sumo, I can export right from the UI. It's actually less than 5 minutes to download the CSV of data to my computer, and then gzip that up, put it on S3, and give them a pre-signed URL. Very easy. Our retention increased to a minimum of 30 days, which is required for PCI, right? So I'm happy about that. Not only that, but just yesterday I was talking to 1-800-Flowers about an issue that they were having for the last 2 months that wasn't necessarily related to us, but we were helping them try to figure it out. With Kibana, I would have been, sorry guys, I wish I could help, but I can't. With this, I'm able to get them the aggregate of the data. And another cool feature of Sumo you might not know of is that even though you have a certain amount of retention, which is 30 days, you're able to keep aggregate data for longer using indexes. And that's something that I would not I wouldn't be able to do that on Kibana because it would take too long to set up that index. I'm not really sure how to do it because it was just, if I'm not able to, I don't even know. Yeah. So I think this slide speaks for itself. Our average downtime was outrageous. I couldn't even put it on here because it wouldn't make sense to you. But Sumo, I mean, I really struggled to find a time where we had any downtime with Sumo. I think I had one glitch where I wasn't able to log in with my 2-factor authentication once. But overall, the reliability has been really great. And as the site reliability engineering director, reliability is key. So I don't have a live demo today because of reliability. But I do want to show you a few of our key dashboards that we use on Sumo. And these are all brand new that we weren't able to get on Kibana. So I think I mentioned to you that we had 500 to 700 gigs of logs when I first started at Moovweb, going in and day out. My account manager, Richard, at Sumo, was really key in helping us to figure out, and I think Jason, I saw, there you are, buddy. All right. These guys were rock stars to help me get 500 to 700 gigs a day down to under 150 gigs a day. And this dashboard is really important to set up, and you can set this up in the apps section of Sumo Logic. It will tell you what your ingest is, whether there's been spikes. Spikes might be indicative of some kind of misconfiguration or a security incident that you might want to look at. So this is actually kind of helpful. As you can see, it also has outlier detection. You can also break it down by source category, collector, and it can even predict what your ingest might look like in the future. And another cool thing that we were able to do with Sumo was that we were able to give customers access to their own data, right? Customers do own their data. As a service provider, we have to understand that. And with Sumo, I'm able to give them a breakdown of what their requests look like, their top user agents. This is actually something that I was working on for 1-800-Flowers' marketing department for their new PWA. They want to make sure that Google's treating them right. So yeah, a lot of these are given to our customers as they are onboarded now. Another really great one for Vistaprint, we bill customers in terms of transforms, right? So we take existing websites and we transform them to mobile experiences. And so we bill them based on transforms. And Vistaprint wants to know, hey, what does my breakdown of transforms look like? And I'm able to build this within 15 minutes and send it to their marketing engineer. That's it. So I'm really hoping that you guys were able to take away from this that, ELK is a scary thing if you don't know how to manage it. But the Sumo folks can really help you to transition your company from a on-prem or perhaps even a cloud-based ELK solution that's hard to manage, takes a lot of time to manage, to something that's really easy and fun to use, actually. And with that, I'm more than happy to take people's questions.
Hi, so if you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll bring the mic to you.
I'm going to stand over here so I can hear you.
So, I mean, why didn't you use Kafka for your message queuing? I mean, why did you go with your other solution?
Sure. So we tried a few different solutions for queuing before we actually moved to Sumo. That was part of the POC process, right? So we were using RabbitMQ, and remember this was all before I got there. It's something that I don't necessarily understand why things were done the way they were. We tried Kinesis actually. So we set up Kinesis Firehose to send the data to a queuing to SQS, and then the SQS would then ship it to Elasticsearch. Well, that's great, but that's additional complexity, right? That you don't necessarily need because you've got it in Cloud Syslog. It just ships it, and you don't have to worry about that. For me, it's like I have to make that build versus buy decision based on the value that I get out of the product as a whole versus the complexity and the time that it takes and what resources I have. And truthfully, the makeup of my team didn't really support the Kinesis the approach. It's a perfectly valid approach to queuing something and waiting for that stuff to be ingested into Elasticsearch. But again, I wanted to really drive home that you only have Cloud Syslog to worry about in this case, right? So.
Hi, with the decision to leave ELK, did you consider Splunk Cloud at all?
We did. I think the decision to go to Sumo was based on cost and also based on prior experience with the product. Splunk can also get kind of out of control with costs based on my experience. So, I would say cost was probably 80% of the driving force, and then 20% was, my experience and other people's comfort with the product of Sumo.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I have a question,
Sure.
Joshua. Can you speak a little bit about your experiences with the Sumo apps? You
Sure.
already, showed us a few screenshots with the data
Sure.
volume app.
Sure. So when I was at Hotel Tonight, we used a lot of apps actually. We used the Nginx app, Varnish app. We do the same thing at Moovweb. Some of the ones that I've used more recently, we're actually doing a proof of concept with Sumo. Very easy to do, by the way. And we're going to be adding PCI compliance related things to our account. We had a deadline of doing that within a week. I was able to set up a trial account with Sumo to test the waters before I went to my my general manager and CEO to get the approval. And I was able to get that set up. I wish I could show you some of the PCI slides, but they contain some sensitive data, obviously. But I'm able to see Linux auth logs, audit logs, some OS query logs, and things like that be sent into Sumo. And I get to see when, CloudTrail, VPC flow logs as well. All this data is being flowed in there, and I can see when users are created, or there might be potential security breaches. And the really cool thing about the PCI app that I have to say is really enlightening after going through my last PCI audit. It breaks it down by the requirement number. So for instance, you've got 12 requirements in PCI. All of them are kind of opaque, and you have to kind of understand it you have to be an auditor to understand it. But it breaks it down, and it actually helps our auditors to log in as well. We can give them a login so that they can look at it, and then it makes their job easier. So I have to say, that is one of the cooler apps. And there's also some beta apps. So I know Jason actually worked on the Kubernetes one that we're trying to work in as well. And I'm really excited because we're launching our new platform, our XDN on Kubernetes pretty soon. The apps are great, and I'm hoping that we can give some feedback to you as well. It's really great.
You mentioned earlier that one or two SREs were spending about 40% of their time keeping the cluster alive. How have you been able to reallocate and refocus them, and how does that impact the business?
It's a great question. So, obviously we were probably strapped for resources because of that, right? So those resources are actually now working on our Kubernetes rollout and also PCI compliance. We're DevSecOps now, so they're working on PCI and dealing with customer issues. I think we probably give 20% of our time to helping other teams with pending customer problems. It's kind of like the tenet of SRE with Google, right? Yeah, sure.
Any other
So you mentioned ELK downs a lot. So ELK has 3 components. So specifically, which parts have
Elasticsearch. I mean, the Elasticsearch was the key component of the ELK. Okay. As you know, or you may not know, but so let me explain. So Logstash can actually be used without Elasticsearch. You can use Logstash to send things to other platforms even. The Elasticsearch part was the thing that we had at 1.5, which is a really old release. We had to figure out how to slowly roll that out from 1.5 to 2.0 to 2.5 to 5 to 6. Then on top of that, we had the kind of, we had a weird Elasticsearch on AWS. In my experience with AWS, it's been kind of opaque. If you've ever used RDS with AWS, you'll know that it's not necessarily the vanilla MySQL that you get from MySQL, Oracle, right? They add some things and they change a few of the configuration options, right? So the problem is that we didn't know what those changes were. We didn't know that, AWS has a weird way of upgrading these things. So we ended up having downtime because of that. We also had a weird thing with our storage. We had 20 terabytes of storage that we had to go over, I think, 16 nodes or something like that. 2 of those nodes went offline and the entire cluster was hosed. I don't like that kind of unreliability. And truthfully, I think that Sumo does a great job of taking that thought out of my mind, and I can focus on taking the data that I actually have in Sumo and pushing it out to customers where it belongs. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
So you use the AWS, the Elasticsearch service.
Yes.
It still has a problem.
Say again.
Do you still have the problem with that, right? So you just mentioned.
We don't use it anymore, so I can't say. But when we did use it, it was a problem. They might have changed a few things in the year since we've used it, but yeah. Great questions, everyone. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, Josh.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
I'm just going to invite our Director of Product Marketing, Vijay, to give a token of appreciation.
Yeah.
Josh?
Gosh. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you, Joshua.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.